I miss KHF talking to those sprites and theorising which characters from different series are actually each other's children. Yeah, well, I was made to pay the price of that, because back when I was still on Twitter, I made a lot of jokes about being attracted to Deku's mum from My Hero Academia. I mean, who wouldn't be? But it ultimately came back to bite me in the bum, because I then found out that Deku's real name was originally going to be Jack, and I've always joked that I was always going to call my kids Jack or Jack Zeta. So I think I have caused some kind of rip in the fabric of reality, some kind of screw-up in the space-time continuum, and Deku may or may not be my biological son. Yeah, I know I used that clip at the start of the previous video, but not everybody was interested in that video, so I thought I'd use it again, just to spread the message out there that I may or may not have a fictional son. I'll check myself into the insane asylum. Hey everybody, so all that stuff about me and Mama Midoriya, that's pretty cringe, but not the cringiest idea I've ever had, and today I thought I'd talk about one of those ideas. I thought I'd start kind of a subsection of my looking back at my old stuff where I talk about the stuff that you didn't see, the stuff that I had planned that I thought was the coolest stuff ever, but now I look back at it and I'm like, what? Like, you idiot. all the intricate storylines I had planned when all people wanted me to do was sit down and talk about anime. So as you may remember in my old videos, I had Team McAwesome, which was KHF, Emma, Chrono from Chrono Crusade, Tamaki Suo for some reason from Wherein High School Host Club, and Cloud Strife. Literally just because those were three costumes I happened to own, like those were the first three cosplays I did. So they had to become characters in my anime review show. I was going through a phase, but did you know there was going to be a Team McAwesome Flashpoint story? For those of you who don't know, Flashpoint was a major crossover event in DC Comics which basically reset the continuity of their universe, even though it wasn't originally meant to do that. It was just meant to be an event, but then DC decided they were going to do this big stupid reboot and mess everything up, and then Flashpoint became the starting point for that, where the universe would be reset because of a massive butterfly effect, and it's all really complicated. There were tons of videos out there talking on the subject. Either way, Flashpoint was a major story wherein Barry Allen, the Flash, goes back in time to stop his mother's murder, but that causes a butterfly effect which changes the entire universe, and you get things like, instead of Bruce Wayne's parents being killed, it was Bruce Wayne himself who was killed in an alley, and his dad became Batman. It's things like that, like the entire universe is like changed entirely and not for the better. You know, it's, you know, the idea that every event, even people's deaths, are important, so... And it's all about trying to fix that and get the universe back to normal. That's a very basic summary. Like I said, there's tons of reviews out there on it if you want more details. You probably have, if you watch the Flash CW series, you probably have a basic idea of what it's about anyway. But anyway, the point is, this was a major thing, and while I was reading it, I thought to myself, what if Team McAwesome? I didn't know this about my condition at the time. In fact, I only found this out really recently. I don't know if it's a newly discovered thing about people with autism, but apparently something that people with autism often do is project themselves onto fictional characters. That's why you see a lot of autistic anime fans like get really touchy when something happens to their favourite characters. It's why I probably did with like things like Haruhi and stuff, because, you know, I was projecting myself onto that, which, you know, explains a lot about those days, now that I know that's a fact of it. And I suppose that's what I was doing here, was like, you know, I enjoyed DC Comics, I read Flashpoint to say I enjoyed it. Had some cool stuff in there, but anyway, I was reading Flashpoint, and again, autistic projection, what if Team McAwesome? So at one point, I was going to have this idea that, yeah, the KHF universe as well got affected by Flashpoint, like, because of Barry Allen messing up the timeline, things got messed up for Team McAwesome as well. I think the idea was that I was going to have Tamaki wake up back in France, with his mother in perfect health and calling him Renee, because if you don't know, that's actually Tamaki's real first name. It was only when he had to move back to Japan he had to use his Japanese name. That's stuff discussed in the manga. But anyway, yeah, Tamaki would wake up back in France with his mother in perfect health. Everything seems good. Like, oh, so basically the exact same way Flashpoint starts off with Barry Allen waking up in the new world to find his mother's alive. Basically, I was turning Tamaki into Barry Allen. Tamaki would have been the only one with knowledge of how the original timeline went. Like, he remembered everything. I don't think I knew why. Like, in Flashpoint, it made sense for Barry Allen because he was the one. Well, sort of made sense because he was the one who messed up the timeline, even though he didn't remember doing that. But I don't know why Tamaki would be the only one to remember. Maybe he had the purest heart, so it gave him immunity to timeline changes. He comes from a shoujo comedy. But like, yeah, he'd realised his mother's in perfect health. He's still living in France. He's still called Renee, and but he'll see like the world is different. And like building on the idea of like Thomas Wayne being Batman instead of Bruce Wayne, I had things like it was Cloud who died outside of Midgar instead of Zack, and it was Zack who went on to become the mercenary of Final Fantasy VII and is still like this mercenary in Midgar in this Flashpoint storyline. Kind of appropriate that I bring this up when they've announced the remake of Crisis Core, actually. So yeah, Zack is the protagonist of Final Fantasy VII, and KHF was going to be his partner, because, you know, KHF has to be in there somewhere. KHF's a mercenary now. For some reason, I think, cause I kept hinting at a backstory with this version of KHF that he strongly hinting that he was married to Yoko from Gurren Lagann, because might as well go the full mile and pair him up with someone who, if she was real, would be way out of my league. But I think the joke with that was always going to be Emma Skye being like, what? But you were married to one of the hottest anime women ever, and KHF was going to be like, I'm a fanfiction character, Emma. What do you expect? Kind of like taking the mick out of that. But anyway, I think in that backstory somewhere he was a mercenary at some point, and like in this timeline he's still a mercenary and his partner's with Zack. You know, Cloud's dead in this timeline, and I think there was other things like Chrono never betrayed Ion and still serves under Ion, albeit begrudgingly, but yeah, he never betrayed Ion and is still part of his group planning to take over the world and overthrow Hell and all that. And in the case of Emma Skye, I think the plan was that she had also died during the SL9 incident, you know, where she had a near-death experience with the serial killer Joe Dark, and it was going to be her sister Lana Skye that was like the representative of the Skye clan in continuing the Skye bloodline, because it's a Capcom game in this Flashpoint continuity. So yeah, I had thought this out. I had plans for this. How are reviews going to play into this? No idea. I have no clue how mercenary KHF, who, you know, does, you know, dirty mercenary jobs with Zack, that sounded more sexual than I wanted it to. I don't know how mercenary KHF was going to do reviews. Maybe I was going to do them as Tamaki. Maybe I was going to, like, I think one idea I was throwing around at the time was like there were changed like timeline versions of certain series, and I was going to do like joke reviews of these new versions. That might have been what the plan was originally, but yeah, KHF Team McAwesome, they were going to have a Flashpoint tie-in. And not only was this like a dumb idea in general, I don't think like my fans would have gone for it, because obviously not everybody's also going to be a comic book reader. You know, I know it's not a genre for everyone, and you know, people would mainly come to the channel for anime content. Not, you know, I remember when I did try reviewing comic books, they didn't do as well because, you know, not as many people were fans of Western comics. I believe one of the most brilliant arguments I ever got into about with someone about that was somebody telling me why manga is better than Western comics is because Western comics are for children. I'm like, well, first of all, there's been manga for children, and second of all, if you think Western comics are for children, you've clearly never read Deadpool. Although I think this was pre-MCU, I think this, well, the MCU was still in its infancy at this point, so obviously, you know, the Western comic market wasn't as mainstream as it is now, because, you know, because of the success of the MCU. Sorry, I knocked the tripod there. But yeah, this whole thing never saw the light of day. But yeah, it was going to be this whole storyline of Tamaki having to gather up the new Team McAwesome, so KHF, Zack instead of Cloud, Lana instead of Emma, and, you know, convincing Chrono to come to the light side to basically discover how to reset the timeline. Although Barry Allen ends up fixing the timeline, but not really fixing the timeline anyway because it still got rebooted. So I don't know how I was going to handle that. Maybe it would suddenly just change back. Maybe Tamaki would find a way to change their timeline back to normal. But I was going to go through this whole dilemma of if they change the timeline back, that means Zack has to die and things like that. And like, yeah, I was going to go through this whole moral dilemma of, well, what's right and what's wrong. I'm like, this is a series where all people wanted me to do was sit on my ass and talk about anime. That was it. This was a common thing in the 2010s. Like, I think I've even shared a video of somebody making fun of it. Like, everyone thought they had to do their own storyline. Like, this whole... It started off as just, like, elaborate skits, making fun of, like, the things people were reviewing, but then they turned into these big, almost MCU-like things, like this big expanded universe, and it's like... I mean, some of it is ironically funny, some of it is just like, oh my gosh, we all were behind this. You know, it's like, you know, looking back on what we used to think was cool, like, some of it is ironically funny, but a lot of it is just, oh my gosh, what were they thinking? And that's what I think, looking back on, like, this whole thing about KHF Flashpoint. I mean, the concept, I think, is interesting, because, like, yeah, a what-if story of what if Cloud died instead of Zack, that is interesting, and I'm sure people have discussed that in other videos, I'm sure people have done fan fiction about that. Like, that's an interesting what-if, you know? People have always thought about that. In fact, like, you know, Musco X does a whole series on what-ifs with Dragon Ball, like, potential things that could have happened if things had gone differently in Dragon Ball, you know. I think the foundation for, like, my what-ifs in this Flashpoint was sound, but obviously I'm putting that in a series of just some douchebag on the internet who's talking about anime. So, you know, well, as well as if I wanted to put it on fanfic.net, I guess maybe it would get some positive feedback only, please. But yeah, no, this was never going to work, and I'm glad it never saw the light of day. But like I say, I think it's got an interesting premise to it. You know, like Tamaki, like, what if his mother never got ill? What if he never had to move to Japan? Like, you know, it's an interesting premise, but yeah, not something I think people would have enjoyed in my videos. I don't think that would have been a huge success, so I'm glad it never saw the light of day. And plus, I had basically no budget. Like, I've never made profit off my videos, nor do I ever plan to. You know, I'm never going to promote earbuds, hair loss products, or crappy mobile games. I'm never going to try and monetize my videos, because I think if it becomes a business, it won't be fun anymore. So, you know, I would have had zero budget for this, nothing. So to do this big elaborate post-apocalyptic, because that's what Flashpoint was like. It was like post-apocalyptic, like the Atlanteans were warring with the Themyscirans, the world was getting desecrated and things like that. Like this post-apocalyptic, you know, what-if timeline with no budget. Yeah, probably best that it didn't happen, but it was something I was thinking about, and yeah, you might, you know, I'm sure some of you out there are saying like, that would have, you would have been interested in seeing that, and I appreciate, I really do appreciate those kind of comments. I appreciate all feedback, but yeah, it's for the best it didn't happen, but food for thought. So yeah, that was one of the many cringy storyline ideas I had for my anime review series. It was stupid, and I'm glad it never happened. But there's a lot more of these stories. Like I said, I kind of went into a bit of it when I was talking about like the backstory I had for that version of KHF. Maybe I'll talk a bit more about that. Being married to Yoko, I think I said in the Takia fight they had a son, so he got busy. Oh, I'm so lonely. So yeah, I'll talk more about more of these storylines, these cringy ideas I had in the future. I said in one of my posts I did have an idea for the big and anti-KHF Organisation 13 sort of thing. Oh, that's going to be a fun one to talk about. Yes, Takia Kuhara was part of it. or he was, but he deserted. Anyway, I'll talk about that another time. So I hope you liked this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully I can do more reactions to my old stuff in the future. But hopefully you enjoyed me talking about the KHF world that could have been. So I'm sure in a universe somewhere I had the budget to do it. Like this, an alternate time, like a Flashpoint where this happened. But I'm glad it didn't happen in this timeline. Anyway, thank you very much for watching the video. Have fun, enjoy yourselves, but don't have too much fun. That can kill ya.